Some sitting right across from me say President Obama just punted his job of making changes to the NSA to Congress. And for more and a roundup of politics making news to get you ready for the new week, let's bring in our political insiders now, Fox News stars over here. And by the way, you can join in on the conversation on Twitter, as many of you already have, at Harris Faulkner and at FN Insiders. John LeBoutillier, former Republican congressman, New York. Pat Caddell, former pollster for Jimmy Carter, president and Fox News contributor. Doug Schoen, former pollster for President Bill Clinton and Fox News contributor as well. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Doug, I'm going to start with
Sure.
you. Why punt this one to Congress?
Well, the president wanted to do two things. First, make it clear how he wanted to reform the NSA, a few cosmetic and small changes. But second, punt to Congress, Harris, so that if and when, and it's more likely when, they don't do anything substantive, he can blame them conveniently in an election year.
And does that get it done, John?
From their point of view, but the big question to me is, when have we ever seen government give up power? Never does. And the NSA is not giving up this power. I don't think our elected representatives, President, Senate, House, I don't think they even know what the NSA does.
So now my follow-up to you, John, is what will Republicans do when it gets to Congress? You think nothing?
Well, they're split. You know, there's the traditional establishment Republicans like this plan, and the growing, not just Tea Party, but the sort of isolationist Ron Paul type people, they don't like it. They're libertarian. They don't like it. The young don't like it. Pat's
so who
been
wins
very
in your
outspoken.
party? Who wins the argument in your party?
The establishment for the time being, because they run the Congress. They run the House.
The president made that speech this week on reforms and essentially said what you just said, that, you know what, we're sorry, we want to fix it, but we're going to keep doing it. Pat, what does this say about the American people that there really hasn't been much of an outcry about these issues of freedoms and privacy?
There is an outcry. We just don't hear it. Just because the media, the mainstream media, doesn't pay attention to it. In Washington, the division that John talked about, not only the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party. Remember, there was almost a vote in Congress to basically defang the NSA, which failed, with many members wanting to actually vote for it, who were called down by the leaderships of both parties. The fact is, the young people particularly have done great damage. The president has suffered greatly, and his party has. This is an effort to try to get this off. The real problem is that the political establishment, the political elite, likes the power. The American people don't, but the elite and the elite media don't listen to what the American people say.
Specifically, though, with these reforms, did the president do anything that really changes all that much? Is my read on it wrong, that they're just going to continue to do this?
They're going to continue to do it, and he made some cosmetic things, but nobody believes it was very real.
Let me talk to you, Doug, about this idea of privatizing all the stuff they have from our phone records and everything else. Can I just say a couple things? Target, Neiman Marcus. Do we necessarily want our personal information privatized by this government?
No, we don't want it privatized. The other thing is the companies who would presumably privatize it don't want to actually do it because it puts a terrible burden on them. And bottom line, given what's going on in the revelations about Snowden being influenced by the FSB in Russia, the most recent reporting on Neiman Marcus, and particularly Target, says that it was Russian organized crime. So this is ominous for our country.
Yeah,
Harris.
and the problem with this is, understand something, Big Brother and Big Data together being married are allies. And it is not to the benefit of the American people. And this is what bothers people. Both of these, they working hand in hand, which they do. And to do even more outsourcing to them, I'm not sure what that solves.
You know what's interesting? I'm starting to hear echoes of what you brought up, John. That part of the Republican Party, that libertarian arm, even among the Democrats, is there room now, real room for a third party? We talk about it sometimes. But where's the reality there?
Well, there is room philosophically. I mean, we know that last week we used the number with you. 46% of people say they're independent now, right? 22% are Republican, 29% are Democrats. So the biggest number ever are in neither party. That's a beginning. And this type of issue is part of the reason. And the IRS abuse is another
But John,
one.
the only thing the two parties agree on is that there shouldn't be a third party, and that's the sole reason it hasn't happened.
Well, that's called self-preservation,
Exactly.
I believe. All right, so Senator Kay Hagan of North Carolina skipped the president's speech at North Carolina State University. Important this week?
Huge.
Why?
Because it shows that Democrats running for re-election don't want to be near Obama, and specifically Obamacare. This thing is dragging them down. We haven't been talking about it much in the news the last couple of weeks because of all these other stories.
Well, we're going to talk about it now.
Right, but Obamacare is rotting out the Democrats for November, and they're worried about it.
We just saw another delay. And shock and surprise, who's pushing for it? The IRS, because they say you didn't give us guidelines, White House, on how to put forth some of the things that this requires. So we've got to put a delay on what big employers do and how they hand it out to their employees.
Obamacare is literally a absolute crisis for the Democrats. 35% support it, 62% oppose it now. Bottom line, the administration is seeing that this could cost them control of the Senate. The Congress could go Republican because of Obamacare. As Pat was saying compellingly, the American people are angry. They don't want big government. They want the burden off their back.
Look, the thing we saw this week, in Gallup, big government continues to be the volunteered biggest issue. The threat of big government corruption, that's never happened. We've had it now for a quarter, for a whole.
What's driving it?
What's driving it is the scandals. What's driving it is Obamacare, the shutdown, all of these things. The threat, more people believe that the government is a threat to them than ever. And, and Obamacare has not helped. I mean, the Democrats are only advantaged by the Republicans' inability to have a narrative, although Boehner promises there'll be a plan. But in these red states where Democratic senators are up for re-election, it is now, they are all taking big hits. And it is now become problematical for them.
All right, you guys, Doug and Pat, are pollsters. You were a congressman in New York, so no doubt polls are important, messaging is important. The White House has to see this, right? They've got to see that there is a mood, if you will, in the nation of at least concern. So, John, I ask you, why does this keep happening? That the big matters with this White House don't come with instructions. The IRS can't go forth with parts of Obamacare because they didn't get the instruction. The NSA stuff, well, not so clear, we'll punt it to Congress.
Well, first of all, from the president on down, they're incompetent. Okay, they don't run anything well, other than his re-election campaign.
Now, are you saying that just because you're a Republican?
No. This government is not run well.
Because the Democrats didn't stop you at the table.
Well, they probably agree with me.
We agree, but the dirty little secret, Harris, the Republicans, Pat's right, the Republicans are down at 22%. They're perceived as even more incompetent than a failing Democratic Party.
All these parties care about is making political points. The White House wants to distract attention from Obamacare. It looks for every issue. The Republicans sit there thinking it's going to fall in their laps. What no one seems to be interested in, what really upsets the American people, is nobody seems to care about the country or actually getting something done other than how it serves their partisan political advantage.
Right. Now, on that point, let me quote Pat, who didn't bring it up as well as he has in the past, which is Republicans wanted to stop Obamacare, right? The dirty little secret of it was to go after that IRS scandal all last summer and fall and go after it because the public was on the Republican side on this deal. That the IRS, we don't trust them, and they're being used for political purposes. Destroy them, and they can't work Obamacare.
There was an article in the Journal by Kim Strassel this weekend that the IRS has a new proposed ruling that really is still aimed at conservatives and Republicans. But guess who else is for that? The Republican establishment. They too are for it. This is the question you asked, Harris, about the IRS handling, we didn't get enough information. The real question debate in this country should have been, what is the IRS doing anyway involved in running health care? They should have been in the first place. But the Republicans refused to make that an issue, and it is all, and so big brother and big government, there you are.
All right. Pat, let's talk a little bit if we can, and I say this to you because you've done some homework on this today. The Benghazi report from the Senate Intelligence Committee blaming the State Department. You saw something today that you say is a trend among Democrats and it's troubling. What is it?
Well, it's a trend among the media, particularly the Democratic. Look, that was a committee run by Democrats that was highly critical of the State Department and raised serious questions, although they chose not to mention Hillary Clinton by name so much. But I watched the shows this morning, and I watched mainstream political reporters, the Washington Post will Meet the Press, saying, oh, the American people don't care about it, only some Republicans. Then on Howie Kurtz on this network, who when he was with CNN was what I call one of the great Benghazi deniers, they were all saying, oh, nobody cares about it. In the face of the fact that there is polling data that shows well over 60% of the American people believe there's a cover-up, and two-thirds of them, including half the Democrats, want a special committee. But we don't pay attention to that because it does not fit into a narrative in which many reporters are functioning as political politicians.
All right, hold on. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and continue this conversation. Give me a chance to pick up some of the comments coming off of Twitter, too.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
We're back with the Fox News Political Insiders, and this was part of, according to Pat Caddell, some trend that he watched today, this kind of language that people just don't care about, whether we know what happened that night.
She's talking about Tom Donilon, who was National Security Advisor, leaker-in-chief, as I've called him on so many things. Bob Schieffer, a man I have always admired, and was playing, I mean, talk about being a pussycat. Tom Donilon was not asked. In the Gates book, he attacks the military and almost calls them, I think, Doug, you said almost like treason. Here is Donilon, who was the mastermind that night inventing this story, and is not asked about it. Because they have decided to move beyond, we have people who've never been taught. The American people want the truth. It's not about who gets served, her political future, the Republican political future. The American people deserve the truth. This is supposed to be a democracy and a republic.
I think we have one last chance on Benghazi. Now that the Senate Intelligence Committee made some progress here, it's up to the Speaker to cut it out now and listen to the 179 Republican congressmen who have asked for a 90-day select committee investigation. Frank Wolf, congressman from Virginia, has this bill in there. That's a super majority of the majority asking the Speaker, appoint the committee.
It's not going to happen.
Why not?
Why not?
Because John Boehner has made a decision not to do it. And Harris, as we sit here today, the Democrats are effectively demonizing Chris Christie, destroying Chris Christie, and bottom line, far more serious scandals, NSA, Benghazi, IRS, AP, all of those, and they're not on the radar screen, notwithstanding how serious they are.
You know why, Doug? Because Democrats go for the jugular. Republicans run from a shadow. I mean, it's really pathetic.
Because they're all part of the same political game. John Boehner's performance is embarrassing. I mean, who would want to be a Republican? My God.
Let's remind everybody, Benghazi, Libya, September 11th, 2012. 4 Americans killed at our diplomatic outpost.
I don't think we...
And lots of questions about what triggered that. Was it organized? Was it Al-Qaeda? Was it other terrorists? So on and so forth.
Right.
But now is our best chance to find out. And you say Republicans won't push for it.
John Boehner won't. John Boehner.
Right, the Republicans want to. I don't know why they don't go to him and say, come on, we're the majority.
Throw him out.
I want to get on the record with something that's breaking this hour. The United Nations is announcing that Iran will be invited to attend the Syria peace talks in Geneva this week. Yeah. The civil war in Syria has been raging for 3 years, claiming more than 100,000 lives. Actually, it's way north of that now. More than 2 million others forced to leave their homes. A lot of refugees in this. The UN Secretary General saying Iran understands the purpose of the peace talks and is able to establish a transitional government within Syria. Is this the kind of thing that has people saying, was there a side deal between the United States and Iran and its nukes? It
raises the question of whether there was a side deal. The Iranians have been empowered. They are now in a position that they are propping up and supporting the war of Bashir Assad. This emboldens and strengthens his hand. It increases the likelihood of more terrorism in the Middle East and makes more likely that nothing will come of the peace deal.
All right, well, hold on. 1 second, Pat. I'm going to get your thought when we come back, but real quickly, Iran and the nukes deal, that takes effect tomorrow.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we're starting to hit dribs and drabs of what was really in that deal. It's almost like you had to pass it, sign it, to find out what was in it. We're back here on the Fox Report. The political insiders are here, and they've just now invited Iran An Islamic regime that had long been considered one of our enemies, into the Geneva talks. Your thoughts?
And the sponsor of what goes on in Syria. It's all I want to say is, you know the old adage, putting the fox in the chicken coop. That's what this is.
Wow, that was quick. All right, so we ask all through the day on Twitter and in this newscast how the mood of America is shaping up. I want to put some numbers on the screen. Now, this is specifically how people feel about their bottom line and their money situation. But it gives us an indication. Are you better or worse off financially now than you were a year ago? That would have been the beginning of the second term of this president, when a lot of the promises were being made, jobs were being promised. 42% say they feel like they're worse off. John?
Well, that combined with the Obamacare effect that we talked about earlier is why the Republicans should, if they're smart, and that's a big if, win back the Senate and keep the House this year. There's dissatisfaction over those numbers. Now, Pat,
and the lack of jobs.
No one ever talks even about what are we going to do to create private sector jobs. It's like a non-issue in the
All right,
program.
let me get in a couple of tweets. Tim Sum says, Harris insiders, I feel sour. A president that can't tell the truth in a stagnant economy lost the Middle East. That's enough. People still feeling over Obamacare that they were not told the truth about certain things. They could keep their health plans, but they couldn't, so on and so forth.
It has become an article of faith that the political establishment has a right to lie to the American people whenever they feel like it. And you know what? The American people have figured out that they're not being told the truth. You see that number you looked at Gallup. This is the first time in several years more people have felt the economy is getting worse, despite all the political class in Washington, all the chattering heads saying it's better. And look at the stock market. The stock market's booming because they're taking care of assets for the rich. But for ordinary Americans, they're suffering.
What the tweet says, Harris, is that the economy for most Americans is bad, that the sense of impotence overseas is clear, and that government isn't working. And that's why dissatisfaction is as profound as it is.
The insiders, thank you.
Thank you.